Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Adam Becker, and I am the Senior Director of Account Management at Octiv. And in case you haven't heard of us, we are a software as a service provider of a solution that's really geared for you, the sales rep, the sales manager, sales teams in general, that really helps you guys create, share, sign, store, and analyze the documents that you're sending throughout the entirety of a sales process. And arguably one of the most important documents that you will send in the B2B sales process, and probably the most impactful, as I'll maybe get into details a little bit later, is that sales proposal, the document that is really geared for transferring who you are as an organization in a clear and articulate manner over to your prospect in order to understand whether they make the decision to buy your software or service or not. And we have three major topics that I really want to cover on today. Number one is, what is a sales proposal? And we'll get into some details around kind of what my view is, having seen a lot of documentation, a lot of proposals across many different industries and sizes of companies. The second piece is maybe some really tactical ways that you should start leveraging those proposals that your teams or you are sending on a regular basis. And that's probably why a lot of you came here today. And then number three, though, is I really want to talk a little bit more about how I believe that we should start truly adopting a new methodology for our sales documents in order to help you differentiate yourselves as you are going about your day-to-day business. So those are the three big things I want to touch on. But before we dive into that, I really want to go one step high level and talk for a moment, just a couple of minutes, on why should you even listen? Why should you even pay attention here for the next 15 minutes? Because that time is valuable. I believe that the landscape of the B2B salesperson is changing. If not already changing, it's going to be changing very, very soon. And it's not because we want to, because let's face it, none of us like change, and I'm lumping myself in here as well. As a salesperson, I really dislike change. I want to be able to do the same thing that's been working for the last 10 years over and over and over again, just what I want to do. No, we don't want to change. It's the expectations of the buyers out there that are forcing us to change. And we have to. We have to be able to keep up with a buyer expectation. It's our job to do so. And if I want to win business over a competitor, I better do it better than the next person out there. So understanding that the buyer expectations are changing is super important. And understanding why and for what purpose they're changing is also important. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of one of our buyers. And realistically, we're all buyers out there, right? We all buy stuff all the time. And just think about this. 10 years ago, I would probably have to go to a mall or to a store in order to research different products that may be able to meet my needs, whatever I'm looking for. It would take some number of days or weeks to be able to do all that research before I make a purchase. Today, I can go online. I can compare tens, if not hundreds of products, all at the fingertips that I have in front of my screen. And not only that, I can get reviews. I can look up all the content and how-tos and video and all that stuff in minutes. On top of that, nowadays, I can actually make a purchase right there. And I can have that item delivered and shipped to me usually within hours. That is the expectation now. If it's going to take me longer than a day to make a purchase, no, that's just not acceptable, right? So I say all that because now I'm putting myself back into a B2B sales process, which typically takes weeks, months, and sometimes even longer. But the expectations of those buyers still are there. They still expect to be communicated with much more rapidly than in the past, and they expect to be done with much more relevant content. So those are two big pieces, and it's not just me that's saying that. I think we have a lot of stats that back this up. And there's two stats I want to focus in on here. Number one comes to us from Serious Decisions, is that 75% of B2B buyers report that content is extremely influential in their selection of one vendor over another, right? So backing that up, content helps win deals. Second piece, 35 to 50% of sales go to the vendor that responds first. That's kind of nuts to me. That's a big percentage there of being able to move that needle, all due to just purely response time. So those are two big stats that really show that if we can solve this problem of getting better content into the hands of the right buyer at the right time, that we have the propensity to win lots and lots of business. Unfortunately, we also have other stats. One stat here comes from the IDC Sales Investment Productivity Benchmark Study that says it takes on average 1 to 5 days for sales reps to find ROI-related sales collateral. That's a long time, right? So I'm a buyer. I expect things in minutes, and you're telling me it just takes 1 to 5 days on average just to find the right content to send out. That's crazy. And a lot of this is wrapped up in another stat that on average, again, sales reps spend 64.3% of their time on non-selling activities. That comes to us from Accenture. So all of this balls up together to show that maybe sales reps are trying. They're trying to get more and more content to their recipients as quickly as possible, but it's really difficult. But there are payoffs there. And payoffs are starting to come through analytics, through technology, and we're seeing this happen essentially in the space, right? This is why Octiv is in existence today, is because there's a lot of companies putting a lot of focus now on how to increase productivity of sales reps, how to increase efficiency of sales reps. And there's a stat here from Salesforce, the one tool that probably everyone on this phone knows. They say that high-performing sales teams are 3.5 times more likely to utilize analytics than underperforming teams. So just analyzing stuff, understanding this stuff, it's really, really important. There's a big opportunity for us to stand out in front of our competition through better content and more responsive nature. And I want to take some of these problem statements, these big issues that we want to address today, and again, bring it back to our title. Bring it back to how can we make and win more business with that one document called a sales proposal. So let's unpack this really quickly. Let's move on to the next step here, is what is an actual sales proposal? So after being in this industry for shade over 5 years, almost exclusively focusing in on this concept we call a sales proposal, it's really funny because that term means so many different things to so many different people. It's actually one of the hard things at Octiv that we've struggled with is the noun proposal. For example, in the advertising space, specifically in the sporting arena, they use PowerPoint presentation. That, in their minds, is a sales proposal. And it's going to have pictures of your logo up on the Jumbotron, and it's going to have pricing and packaging for different options that you could have if you wanted to essentially have your brand or your logo smattered across a stadium. In the world of software sales that I live in, a sales proposal is traditionally a PDF that has a cover letter and it has a whole bunch of content and pricing and potentially can be signed in order to move on to a contracting step, whatever it may be. And I could go on and on. It's suffice it to say that the look and feel physically may be different, but really the purpose is the same. And the same in the fact that we can definitely say that proposal is a tool that you use essentially to convince someone to buy whatever it is you're selling, right? So it's also important to understand that the proposal itself across all of these definitions and across all of these industries is also most often given to the recipient, the buyer, at the same point within that sales process. It's generally speaking after a bunch of research that's done, a bunch of relationship building that's done, and it's also a really important time in that sales process because the sales proposal oftentimes is the transference when you are essentially relinquishing control of the sales process over to the buyer to say, hey, I believe I have the right solution for you with all of the documentation for it and all the pricing, and I'm ready for you to go off and start making your decision. It's towards the end of that sales process, and it's typically right at the point of signature, or at the very least, right at the point of which they're beginning to make a decision. So we think about all the documents leading up, or all the activities leading up to a sales proposal, it all has a culmination in this concept that we call a sales proposal that is, again, content that should be highly relevant, meant to convince someone that you are better than your competitors, that you have their best interest at heart, and has all the information they need in order to make an accurate and a mutually beneficial decision. So at the end of the day, when we're talking about a sales proposal, we already addressed that it is really important that we use it, and it has to get our point across, because this is generally the last position in which we have control over that sales process. After we hand that document over, oftentimes what happens is it's going to get looked at not only by your contact that your salesperson is working with, but also very typically they're going to take that document, that proposal, whether it's physical or digital, and they're going to literally pass it right across to other influencers or other people that are a part of that decision-making process. So it's super important that we put the respect that it's due, so that that proposal looks good, that it functions well, and it's highly differentiating. So I'm going to walk through some really tactical things that we've seen winning sales proposals really have as far as characteristics. And when I say winning sales proposals, I mean that very, very sincerely. We actually here at Octiv have the ability to see and monitor many deployed online digital proposals, and it's given us the opportunity to start understanding what are the components, what are the characteristics of those documents that actually end up in a closed won state versus the documents and the characteristics of those that end up not going to a closed won or not getting signed. So these are pretty cool things that we're going to walk through here, and I hope you're taking notes. Number one, we have a lot of data that we can look at here at Octiv, and allows us to look across all of the content, all the proposals, so tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of proposals, and we're able to analyze those documents to see many different things. One of those items is which page or pages of a proposal get looked at most in a priority order. And it's unsurprising and a little bit underwhelming, but the order in which pages get looked at across the board are number 1, the cover letter, number 2, pricing, and number 3, kind of the about us, right? The about us section of a proposal. Pretty unsurprising there. Number 1 being the cover letter, but that's our first tactical piece of information, is never underestimate a good cover letter. This is one of the characteristics we see in a winning proposal, is that the cover letter is a piece of real estate that would be apropos to above the fold. So meaning back in the day when newspaper and print was the mode of communication that everyone read, the most important area on a newspaper is considered above the fold, above physically where that newspaper is folded. That's where everyone who picks up a newspaper looks first. Same thing goes for a cover letter. A cover letter is going to be the one page that you know that everyone is going to look at your proposal. So don't waste it. The winning proposals we see really differentiate your people here. If you have the ability to do this, we've seen some pretty cool examples of people taking headshots of their sales rep, humanizing this proposal, giving some emotional connection for the buyer, and we see that being a really impactful way to do it. Not only will they have obviously their title and who they are, but an image of them and the reason of why the prospect should be purchasing from them, the person, for the products that they're offering. So number 1, don't undervalue the use of that cover letter. The second piece I want to touch on from a tactical perspective is the why, or that about us section. Way too many times when I see proposals being sent by customers out there, is they have a very generic about us or the value proposition section of their proposal. When in reality, many offerings out there, and I'm guessing most of the people here on the phone, you probably have different value props that you position given the needs of a customer or a prospect. So instead of maybe blanketing all of the value propositions with a very generic one-size-fits-all approach, think about strategically putting in more relevant information. gear your proposal and its offerings around the value that are very unique for your customers and their time. This is also a great place to really demonstrate the ROI that they can expect from utilizing your product or your tool. Really, really important that is how people connect emotionally. They connect first with the people and second as to the why of buying. So that's the second takeaway here, is really focus in on being relevant with your value propositioning and why someone should buy from you. The third tactical item to take away is the use of customer testimonials. It's a way for you to showcase your past work and demonstrate where you're able to accomplish for your customer. Kind of eliminates doubt a little bit, puts a nice warm comfy blanket around them, all of those types of things. Customer testimonials are a great way for you to prove that you've done this before and eliminate risk in the eyes of your prospects. It's also really important to remember that in the B2C world, how often do you rely on customer reviews, regardless if we know those people or not, as a buying kind of indicator of this is the right vendor or not? I do it all the time when I'm looking at hotels, when I'm looking at Amazon, I'm looking at kind of across the board. I'm looking at those whatever star reviews, 5-star reviews. The higher number of reviews that it has with a higher rating, the odds are I'm going to lean towards that for my decision. So do the same thing in the B2B sales process. You should really think about the customer testimonials that are going to impact that specific customer as well. Just like in the value propositioning, you should be very specific and very relative. If you have the luxury, make sure that the customer testimonials are in the same industry or same size of the current prospect. And if you can, align with the same value props. In our world and in my world, when we're selling our software, we're usually aligning to, I want to make my sales reps more effective. I want to reduce time from their sales plates. We want to align the best customer testimonials that demonstrates that, hey, we've done that in your industry, and we can do that for you. Again, really, really confident way to put your feet forward there. The fourth tactical takeaway is what I like to call being easy to do business with. And what I mean by that is simply have all of the relevant information that is needed to make a buying decision available in your proposal. Things like your pricing details there, and make sure they're accurate. Odds are that the person who you're sending this to is probably either not going to be the final signer on the document, or, hey, this signer is the person you're sending it to, but they'll have to get buy-in from other influencers. So make sure you have every piece of information you possibly can, all the way down to things like your T's and C's, your terms and conditions, whether they're web terms or whether I've seen organizations put links out to their full terms and conditions within a Word document, whatever that may be. Make sure that those are available there, because oftentimes if you start sharing, if your buyer or the person you're sending this to start sharing this with a lawyer or legal individual, they may want to start reviewing how much risk is involved of simply looking at your terms and conditions. So always package all of those items together with a call to action. And that's such an important part that I think a lot of people are probably missing, is that once people decide that they're going to move forward with the vendor, they generally want to move forward as quickly as humanly possible, because they're likely going to be under some form of deadline. So make sure that you have some form of call to action. E-signature is a really important part of technology nowadays. It's becoming a mainstream item. It's highly secure, and people are employing it across the board, across the world. Use call to actions, whether it's going to be the final signature on the proposal or whether it's simply more like a letter of intent. Make sure that there is something that someone can take action on, so you get some feedback as quickly as possible on what your customer prospect is thinking. And the fifth and final point that I'll make is this concept around being able to easy to do business with, but wherever your buyer or your recipient may be. Some of our customers are starting to experience large growth of selling into the mobile buyer, right? And this is just kind of a trend we're happening across the market. And we're seeing this happen on data. We're able to actually view the devices that our customers' recipients are viewing these proposals on. And it's been crazy. 3 years ago, it was around a 19 to 20% mobile first view, meaning that almost 19 or 20% of documents are being viewed on a mobile device. I actually ran some reports last week, and for some of our customers, this is almost 50-50 now. That being said, that 50% of the recipients of your documents are trying to open those documents on a mobile device. People do this. They open those documents past their working hours as well, and our stats show that. So you want to make sure that you are thinking about that. Make sure that your proposals are able to be viewed on a mobile device, and if it's possible, again, make sure that that call to action is functioning. So if you can, on a mobile device, make it signable, go ahead and do that, and I'll bet you anything we can move that needle a few points on that. So those are your 5 tactical takeaways. Make sure you are emphasizing who you are and why in a very relevant message. Throw in those customer reviews and testimonials, and again, those should be very relevant to industry or the value proposition. Make it easy to do business with by having all the relevant information from pricing to contracts and terms. And then lastly, and most importantly, make sure that you're starting to think about doing business in a mobile environment. Super important to be able to consider that. Coming down the home stretch, I want to start thinking forward now. I want to start thinking about what are some strategic things that I believe we'll be able to start employing over the next 6 to 12 months and really start, again, moving that needle a little bit more. Number one, that documents that are shared more win more. And our data proves this. When we're comparing documents that are closed won versus documents that have been part of a sales process that don't, the proposals that are getting shared, roughly 25% more are the ones that are the winning proposals. A good proposal should be shared between 2 and 3 and 4 people. So somewhere above 2.5 to 3 people are winning proposals are being shared with. Oftentimes those are individuals that your sales reps or you as a sales rep are simply not even having access to within a sales process. So be mindful of that. Gear your document, gear your proposal and the content in that so that it is shareable and it's consumable in its entirety. That's your first big takeaway. Over the next 6 months, how can you make your proposals more shareable? And how do you make that an easier process? Second big piece and thought to really drive home over the next few months, how can you differentiate yourself from your competitors? Let's be honest. Everyone is sending a sales proposal, and very few people put that much thought and emphasis into it. So how can you take advantage of that? How can you view that as an opportunity? At the end of the day, in the B2B sales process, people buy from people. We say this all the time. Relationships sell, all of those different sayings in the sales world. So how do you use a sales proposal to differentiate yourself, but more importantly, differentiate you as in people? Highlight that sales rep, highlight the relationship that he or she or that team has. Use imagery, use video. All of those mechanics are there so that you can create a deeper relationship so that people recognize who you are and then they want to buy from you. So think about areas in that sales proposal or the process pre and post that proposal that you can really highlight you as you are people. Third piece is response time matters. We already heard this earlier. 35 to 50% of sales goes to the vendor that responds first. Be mindful of that. Use engagement analytics. There's lots of different technologies out there that you can begin to employ, whether it is email tracking so you can see when someone views the document, whether it's software like ours where you can actually physically see in real time who's looking at what and what content they're looking at. But begin to employ those technologies that will equip your sales reps to be able to pick up the phone and call that person within a few minutes or hours of them viewing that proposal. Be top of mind. Time matters. So leverage that to your advantage and encourage your sales reps to get out there and pick up the phone and use those analytics to call at the right time. The last two, again, it's a reiteration of making it easy to buy. So not just for a sales proposal, but through the entirety of a sales process. What are the areas where you can curb in time? Where can you make it so that a buyer within your sales journey or that buyer's journey to just make it a little bit easier for them? Think about it, take it into heart, understand what you can do to make their lives easier as well. And number 5, and this is usually the golden rule, You're never going to find a silver bullet out there. No one technology, no one hint, no one best practice is ever going to take you from, winning at a 10% rate to a 30% rate. Nothing's going to do that. Focus on incremental progress. The way I like to say it internally is my little saying is a little better a lot of times adds up to a lot better. So focus on how do I move that needle 1% or even 0.5%, but how do I do those 1% several times over many different areas? You do all of those over time, and soon you'll start seeing differentiated documentation, you'll seeing differentiated sales, and eventually you're going to see how you actually can create a better winning sales process through incremental progress. I hope you've enjoyed the content that I've shared with you today, and I hope you take some of it to heart. If you really enjoy this, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Becker3WW. Again, my name is Adam Becker, here with Octiv. Join us at our website. Join in the conversation. I love talking about this stuff, and I hope to be able to talk more about it in the future, unveil more analytics, more data, and how we can all get better and win more business by leveraging tools like a sales proposal. Thanks again, and I hope you have a great day.